So you've said previously that one of the things that you really like about the film is that it kind of humanizes the icon that is Lincoln. How do you think it does that, it accomplishes that goal, and why do you think it's important for us to kind of humanize our icons?
One of the ways it does it is by showing his relationship with his son, Robert. That's who I play. You'd think Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest men in American history, must have had a great relationship with his son, but he didn't, actually. It was a pretty strained relationship, and Lincoln was absent a lot. He was off on the circuit when Robert was young. And that's a tension that we tried to keep bubbling just beneath the surface in all of our scenes. Why do I think it's important to humanize our icons? Well, because they are human beings. And, 150 years later, we sort of deify Abraham Lincoln. And we sometimes forget that he actually had to make a lot of compromises, and he was getting grief from all sides, people who were dissatisfied with him and criticizing him. And he had to stick to his guns and do his best to move his agenda forward. Nowadays we look at his agenda, and in hindsight, it seems pretty obvious. No human being should be a slave. Back then, it wasn't obvious, I guess. It was very controversial. And I think that's absolutely applicable today.
It is, and I think one of the interesting things that Tony Kushner has said is that we tend to look at our leaders today or the world today, and if it's moving at a pace that we're not happy with, feel like it's failing. And then I think one of the nice things about Lincoln is that you can say this is a man who kept his son out of the war, who made massive mistakes, and yet made huge change. How do you think that this film will sort of impact how people are looking at our world?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, when I watched the movie, one of the things I took away is that things do change. Even though they change slowly, and sometimes it goes in baby steps. If you look at Lincoln's time and compare it to our time, there are important differences and important points of progress that we've made. We haven't come as far as what I would like, but that's better than nothing, I guess. And I don't know, it's easy to get discouraged nowadays and feel like nothing ever changes. We can't move the ball at all. There's so many, the money is just so powerful, and it just won't let go of anything. But baby steps, I guess.
Robert Todd Lincoln, he was a really fascinating figure in his own right. So was there one thing that you learned about him that was especially illuminating for you, or one moment that you got to play that was your favorite?
Well, it's a fascinating story with Robert Lincoln. He wanted to join the Army because everybody at that point was fighting. It's not like today where soldiers are, professionals who sign up. Back then, everybody was fighting in the Civil War except for Robert, because the president and the first lady were keeping their son out of service. They had already lost 2 sons. And you can understand why a parent would want to keep their child out of a bloody war. But it's also pretty hypocritical to perpetuate a war and ask that other people send their sons off to war, but keep your own son out. And again, I think it's really important to show Abraham Lincoln in this moment of hypocrisy, show that he wasn't an angel and that he made mistakes. And it is fascinating to see how the story develops, because eventually, Robert does really fight for his right to not be ashamed of himself and play this cowardly role, but to join, and eventually he did.